Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for coming out to the Enhancing Your Financial Wellbeing workshop. Before we begin, I would first like to recite the land acknowledgement. We acknowledge the Tutelo-Monacan people who are the traditional custodians of the land on which we work and live, and recognize their continuing connection to the land, water, and air that Virginia Tech consumes. We pay respect to the Tutelo-Monacan nations and to their elders past, present, and emerging. We also acknowledge the university's historical ties to the indentured and enslaved whose labors built this institution. We pay respect to these people for their contributions to Virginia Tech. On behalf of the ACE, I would like to thank the co-sponsors of this event, ICC, BCC, El Centro, IEC, and Hokie Wellness. I have the pleasure of introducing Dr. Kevin Sutton, the Assistant Director of Financial Wellness from Hokie Wellness, who will be facilitating this workshop. So welcome, Kevin, and I'll give it to you.
Thank you for having us. Very happy to be here, everyone. I'm joined today by Derek, who is one of our star financial wellness peer interns. I'll have him introduce himself in a second here, but today we're going to be talking about enhancing your financial well-being. So while we cover a lot of different topics, we're going to be providing a very high-level overview today of some of our main points. But do keep in mind that we have specific workshops for budgeting, credit, and student loans that we're going to be skimming the surface of today. And we also meet with students individually for one-on-one appointments to discuss really any financial topic, usually one of those three, but we just want everyone to know that we're a resource. We're really new to tech. So it's really awesome to be able to provide this type of support to students that normally most institutions, there's a gap. So without further ado, I'm going to share my screen and we are going to have Derek talk a little bit about himself, his major, that type of thing.
So hi everyone. Like Evan said, my name is Derek Wee. I am financial wellness intern here at Hokie Financial Wellness. I am majoring in clinical neuroscience and I'm currently a junior.
Awesome. All right, and without further ado, let's get started. Feel free to unmute yourself or type questions into the chat. Derek, since I'm sharing my screen, I may not be able to see the chat. So if you wouldn't mind monitoring that, that would be great.
Mm-hmm. All right, so just a broad question to everyone. How do you define financial wellness, or what does it mean to you? And again, feel free to unmute or send it into the chat.
So I guess I'll just say I define like financial wellness as being able to manage or like being able to like comfortably manage your like your finances in a way where you're not in like a dire financial like financial event, right? Just in case there's like like I said, there's a like a financial event, you're able to pay it off in a moderate time frame, but just being comfortable with your finances.
Absolutely. I like the end there. Being comfortable with your finances. That entire thing right there, that's basically what financial wellness is. So what we like to say is the ability to use one's knowledge and skills to manage their financial resources effectively for a lifetime of financial well-being. So yeah, that's being able to pay off your debts in like a decent amount of time. That's being able to not stress or worry about your financial situation on a day-to-day basis. So yeah, that was great, Edward. Thank you. And just a fun little activity. We have like a 9x9 grid here with different like things you can spend your money on. Does anyone want to like just chime in and say like where they think they might be spending a little too much money? I know I personally have been spending a lot during quarantine shopping online, and that's something like I recognize and I've identified as like a larger source of my expenses.
I would say food.
Food, absolutely. And do you guys want? Okay, thank you, Oscar, for your chat. Yeah, so Eric and Oscar, do you guys want to like sort of specify on like what you mean by food, like groceries or going out to eat, drive-throughs?
I would say since, quarantine and code and everything, like ordering through DoorDash and stuff like
Yeah,
that, and there's like fees. So I would say like in that aspect, more money.
yeah, absolutely. Anything else here that you guys have identified as like maybe something that you're spending more money than you're wanting to on?
Not technically right now, but like at the beginning of every semester, it's like on textbooks, like
Yeah,
very
absolutely.
expensive.
Textbook costs add up, and like the like online codes. Yeah, no, I get you. All right, awesome, thank you. What about some places where you think you're saving money on?
For sure, travel.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially because like we're not allowed to go anywhere anymore. Same with like vacation, I guess, right? All right. So I just wanted to get you guys to start thinking about like how you're using your money and like where it's going to. And the key idea of money management is not to spend more than you earn. So not to let your expenses exceed your income. And what a budget is a outline of estimated earnings and expenses for a specific period of time. So that's a tool that we can use to sort of figure out that balance of how much you can spend without like cutting too much into your income.
Yeah, and that last part too, like it's for a specific period of time. So you might make a budget for a week, right? If you get paid every week, sometimes that is what people would do. Or you might make like an annual budget for like your entire year. However, most people, and how we're going to refer to a budget is over the term of a 1 month period of time. And the reason for that makes sense if you think about people's expenses usually recur on a monthly basis. Your Netflix or Hulu, your phone bill, your rent, electric bill, all of those things typically happen for most people in a 1 month time frame. So it helps to frame when you're planning out what your income and expenses are to be in that amount of time. However, you can also make a budget for whatever amount of time makes the most sense for you in your situation. And when it comes to the locations of that budget, we have a couple of different recommendations. The first, not really a recommendation, but it's an option you have, which is have no budget at all. So, this might be someone that isn't responsible for the expenses that they incur. So they might have like a parent or guardian's credit card that they swipe freely. They may not even pay attention to prices. That might be a situation some people are in. We don't really recommend that, even if you aren't responsible for the expenses. It's really a good idea to know, at least generally, how much it costs for you to function on a day-to-day. Where most people in the United States are is this budget in your head, right? So most people navigate knowing they have a rough idea of how much might be in their checking account, maybe their savings. They know about what they get paid each pay period, and they live their life financially through that lens of saying, okay, I know I'm spending less than I'm earning, so I'm doing okay. And in most cases, that is true. You might be doing okay. However, you can get from whatever level you're in to the next level, you're going to be more successful. So taking that to that next level is to make a budget one time, whether that's on a piece of paper, in Excel, in an app. There's a lot of budgeting apps out there. Putting thought into where you're planning on your money going is a great step in the right direction, and it can significantly benefit your overall financial health. While creating a budget on paper or Excel may not be as appealing for people, some people prefer to use the notes section of their phone, right? They have a rough plan that you put thought into one time, and that's a great start. When it comes to truly budgeting though, you wanna do more than just make this list one time and never look at it again. You wanna track your expenses and say, okay, I said I was gonna spend $200 on groceries this month. Am I spending more than that? Am I spending less than that? What is gonna be an accurate amount? And if I am spending too much, what can I do to change my behavior over time to get to the amount that I have identified that I'd like to be spending on groceries?
And what we can do is to sort of make a basic budget and identify where to start. We can also call this a personal savings and spending plan, because there's typically a negative like stigma when people hear budget. They think, oh, I need to deprive myself of these luxuries or these different expenses, which we don't really want to enforce like in your head. We want to just be able to adapt like your spending habits to your income. So step one is to identify your income if you have any. This can be like a stipend if that's what you get, or your paycheck, or if you get money from your family. And step two is to identify your fixed expenses and saving goals. So if you know you're going to be if you know you're going to want to save for something in the future, like maybe a car, that would be a saving goal. And your fixed expenses are things that occur on a regular basis. So this can be like your rent, your internet bill, Hulu, Netflix, things like that, things that you know are going to be coming on a specific date. And then step three is identify your variable expenses. These are things that can change every time you make that expense. So like going to the grocery store, you're not always going to be spending exactly $50 or exactly $100 when you go to the grocery store. And this can be going out to eat with friends. And then step four, you want to keep track of your spending. So when you look at your budget and look at your spending, does it align with what you believed you would spend? And then step five is after comparing the two, your expenses and your budget, adjust your budget appropriately. Don't necessarily deprive yourself because you went over budget. Instead, move some things around to better fit your lifestyle.
Yeah, and if you don't have income right now, that first step could also be identifying your current resources. So if you have, maybe you got a student loan refund to last you all semester, knowing how much you have to live off of and identifying how long that money needs to last you, right? So even if you don't have an income, this is still something that you can practice with. Another way of practicing budgeting, if you, maybe you don't have a source of income and maybe you don't have a lot of current resources, is if you have like a meal plan with tech or your flex dollars, you can budget out a spending plan on how much you're going to spend each week so you don't run out of those funds by the end of the semester, right? So there's lots of different ways you can practice budgeting.
And for like the savings goal we talked about earlier, another thing that you want to look at is an emergency fund. And this is just something to fall back on in case something like the beginning of COVID happens again, where you're not getting the income you're expecting, or you could be out of work for a certain amount of time. And so how we want to do this is to first identify your comfort number. This is going to be different for everyone. This is just a number like the number you see on your bank account statement that makes you feel, okay, yeah, that's not too bad. I'm comfortable with this. And then as you can see, it's red, which means you want to get there like as soon as possible. And then the next step is the 3 months expenses. So this will be what you have to pay for in a 3-month time frame. So this includes rent, groceries, eating out, gym membership if you have one, all of that for the next 3 months. And this is yellow because although it's important, if you already reached your comfort number, you don't have to devote all your resources to that. You can sort of start putting money into different accounts. Like, so since you already got to your comfort number, instead of maybe putting 100% of your extra income into your emergency fund, you can do like 75% or 50%, and then have the rest go towards yourself or saving for your car. And then next after that is 6 months income. And I just want to point out that this is 6 months income, not expenses. So if you have a regular job that you get paid, I don't know, bi-weekly, you just take what you make that month. And then you want to try and get to 6 months worth of that income. And as you can see, this is green instead of yellow or red, which means you really don't have to like put so much effort into this one, like even less effort than the 3 months expenses. because you're already covered for 3 months worth of not having an income, right? So let's say you spent like, you put 50% of your extra income before. Now you can cut it down to maybe like 25 or 10%. Again, it's whatever you're comfortable with. Just don't, you're allowed to like, put less resources into it as you increase. And we don't necessarily want you to stop after you reach the 6 months of income. At that point, you can keep going, but again, focus on your other priorities.
Yeah, exactly. So, you know, you might have other financial priorities that come up, like maybe you are saving for a car, maybe you want to pay down some of your student loan debt, right? The reason why you definitely want to get to that comfort number and work towards that 3 months expenses first is that way, if you're, let's say you are trying to pay down debt, if you put all of your money into debt and you're not continuing to save, what happens if an emergency does take place? You might have to go in debt again to cover that emergency. So really prioritizing that saving piece at first is really important. But as you have a little bit more financial stability, it then opens up the possibility to focus on other financial goals. And that leads us right into our next discussion here on wants versus needs. So Derek, if I lead this, are you able to annotate on the screen?
That's what I'm checking right now.
If not, that's okay. So
I don't think so. Sorry.
yeah, that's right. That's all right. Normally we would like write or type on the screen, but for right now, we'll Derek will keep like a log in the chat for these as they come through. So let's start by just sharing what comes to mind when you hear like wants versus needs. What are some examples of wants that come to mind for you?
Clothes.
Clothes. All right, so I'm gonna keep a note here too. So clothes are a want. But does anyone else disagree that clothes might be a need? I'm not saying you're wrong or right. I just, you know, let's have a discussion about that.
I guess it depends. Because I know for me, I recently went to a job fair at the beginning of the semester and I needed a new suit or a new button up essentially. So I guess it depends in the situation. But I know for sure when I do go on like online shopping, for sure those clothes are not needs but more wants instead. So depends
That's
on
a
the
great point.
situation.
So depending on your situation, maybe also like culturally specific, like at least here in the United States, having some form of clothing would be a need to participate in most activities in society, right? You know, to go grocery shopping, you usually have to have at least an article of clothing on to cover parts of your body, right? So at its very core, clothing might be a need, but then once you have that initial need met, and maybe you do have, you know, a couple outfits for work, continuing to spend money in that category might move it more into wants, right? That's awesome. What are some other things that come to mind when you hear that, like a want?
Maybe
I
like
personally think maybe like, oh, sorry, go ahead.
no, you got it.
No, Derek will not share. If you have something to share, Derek can wait.
Okay. Oh no, I was gonna say like shoes, maybe more like luxury shoes, like a better car, like a nicer car, should I say? Those
So
are like
yes,
wants.
so like similar concept of like once that need might be met, the getting like the newest or the most expensive might be more of a want. How about like, I don't know, Derek, what's a good example of another want that comes to mind for you?
I was gonna say like a new phone.
Yeah, new phone. But a phone by itself could also be seen as a need because maybe you need a way to like call 911 or you know, stay in touch with family could be a need for people.
Oscar said video games or new phone as a want.
Video games. I am a huge gamer. You know, not Xbox, I'm a Sony fan myself, but Nintendo's always has a soft spot in my heart. So as much as I enjoy video games, at the end of the day, I would say, yeah, that's more of a want for me, right? It's not, I'm not gonna not pay my rent in order to afford video games. So, you know, having that priority is also important. Awesome. So let's get talking about some things that you would say are needs. Like, what are some of the basic needs that you may need to make sure that you're meeting? And I might have given away my own need of rent, right? So rent might be a need.
Oscar said food and rent.
Food.
And
Yeah.
personally, I think there could be an argument for coffee. Monica said, oh, I'm sorry.
An argument for coffee, you said?
Yeah. Monica said insurance, and Tareem said tuition payments.
Tuition payments,
All pretty
right?
good
Yeah.
needs.
Yeah, if you don't pay your tuition, you know, then you're not meeting that need for maybe education, right? So, or getting that degree, which, you know, if you're going to be, whether you're borrowing or whether you're paying out of pocket, you want to make sure you get that degree on time. We'll touch more on that later too, but yeah, tuition would definitely be a need to think about.
So since we're starting to think a little more about these wants and needs, let's talk about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I'm sure a lot of you have heard about this, like especially if you've taken psychology class, but what these basically are things that you need in your life. So at the very bottom are your very basic physiological needs. This is air, water, food, shelter, things that you will die within a few days, if not sooner, if you don't have. And then above that, we have safety needs. This is personal security, employment, things that will make you feel comfortable and able to progress in life. And then above that is love and belonging. This is friendships, family, intimacy, sense of connection, like things that will bring you social joy. So maybe you go to a coffee shop, not necessarily because you need the coffee like I do, but you're hitting on the barista because you think they're kind of cute, right? This is love and belonging. So, and then above that, you get esteem. This is your self-respect, self-esteem, recognition, strength and freedom. So these are things that make you feel better about yourself or just about life in general. This could be maybe going to the gym because that makes you feel more comfortable, or going to different like hobbies that make you feel better about what you're doing in life, right? And then above that is self-actualization. This is desire to become the most one can be. And we like to think of these as like transformational experiences, right? So one thing that comes to mind is college or school, education, anything, because these are experiences that no one else can take away from you after you've gone through it, right? After you've taken 1 or 2 semesters at tech, no matter what you do there, right, or here, no one can take away like the parties you went to, the classes you attended, any of that.
Yeah, those experiences. And so while all of these are needs, you want to make sure that you're asking yourself in your budget, is it sustainable, this current spending, right? So while although love and belonging might be a need that you have, if you look at your budget sheet and you say, wow, I meet that need in so many ways. I'm going out to dinner with my friends. I'm going to get coffee in the morning. I go on dates. Like if you're meeting that same need repetitively, that might be an indicator to yourself to say, maybe this is an area that I can afford to spend less in, right? So acknowledge that you're still meeting a need, but ask yourself if that is sustainable. And there's also a difference between retail therapy and self-care. So self-care is important. You're present with yourself, check in with yourself. What emotions are you feeling? Whereas retail therapy might be if you're feeling any type of emotion, whether that's sadness, frustration, or even joy. You might find this desire to spend money on buying material things that you might even regret a few days later. So sometimes people justify retail therapy as if it were self-care when they're really different things. We want to make sure that we're being clear there that even though those are needs that are being met, you're being mindful in your ways that you're meeting them. Another way to help control maybe some spending in food, I know someone might have mentioned that as an area where they might spend a lot of money, is to think through what meals you're going to cook and what meals you're going to order out each week when you're thinking about what your weekly plan might be. So if you are grocery shopping, once you plan out what meals you're going to have, let's say for dinner each night, you know what you need to put on that grocery list, right? If you're buying vegetables and you're going grocery shopping maybe each week or every 2 weeks, you can make that decision based on how long those vegetables are going to last you. For people that hate grocery shopping, can only go grocery shopping maybe once a month, the vegetables might be not edible anymore at the end of the month. So having that plan to make sure you're getting the most of the money you are spending is really helpful. For college students, Derek, would you mind sending these into the chat? Awesome. We have 2 websites for you. The first is Budget Bites, which has recipes that go down to the cost per serving for them. They're healthy. You can filter by different dietary needs, I believe. So if you're looking to spice up your diet in spicy or non-spicy ways, Budget Bites is a great resource to check out. And the second list is collegelifemadeeasy.com. If you're someone that might be intimidated about the thought of planning out every meal you're going to make each week, this gives a sample college grocery list of some staple items to keep on hand. That way you are making sure that you are being responsible with your money while still having food on hand to make sure that you're eating healthily as well. So those are 2 great resources. We really encourage you to check those out.
All right, and the importance of setting goals. Why is it important to set goals? Well, you definitely want to have something to shoot for, something to like look at and know you're making progress. And this helps you to accurately budget for an upcoming expense. And to do that, you need to have the true cost of the expense first. So let's take vacations, for example. You want to discuss with everyone how much you can afford, how much everyone can afford before you start making more plans. You don't want to leave anyone out, and you definitely don't want to have like unexpected surprises after you already get to your destination, right? So do things like look at the menus of the restaurants you'll eat at, look around the area of the hotel, look at the cost of the hotel, and then sort of like try and plan out as much as possible. Obviously, not everything's gonna go exactly on the dot, but if you have a good idea and then make your budget for that reflective of your plans, then you'll be a lot better off and there's going to be a lot less surprises. And now we're going to talk a little more about credit. So what is credit? Credit is, in general, it's the availability of money that you have not yet earned. So this isn't your paycheck. This isn't money that someone else has given you. This is money that you're borrowing from someone else. And this can come in the forms of loans, credit cards, like a mortgage, which is a type of loan, but all that is credit. And so to sort of conceptualize credit, you want to put yourself in the position of the lender. Lenders pay to be able to see your credit score. It's not just sort of given to them. They pay for this because they want to know how trustworthy or like likely you are to pay them back. Now, why would they want to do this? If you know someone that can't be trusted, you want to develop a way to let other people know not to trust them, right? Like, let's say you let your friend borrow some lunch money to get some Chick-fil-A, right? They do this over and over again, but have never paid you back. So you sort of let your friends and their friends know, hey, this guy hasn't really paid me back, even though they've borrowed like $20, $30 from me already. So just to warn you, right? you definitely would want to know about that. And this is why lenders pay to see your credit score, because it's a way to sort of reflect on the people borrowing their money.
Yeah, exactly. And when we're talking about credit, we're going to talk about the FICO credit score. And FICO, FICO, stands for the Fair Isaacs Corporation. And as a corporation, they are looking to make money. A lot of times people think of their credit score as something that's just intrinsically part of them, that that they don't necessarily know the behind the scenes work of this. So FICO, the company, will create every few years, every 7 years or so, a new algorithm or calculation to better determine how likely you are to pay people back or organizations back once you borrow money from them. They take that calculation and algorithm and they sell that to like banks or credit card companies. So when Derek was saying that people pay to view your credit score, they're purchasing that calculation from the Fair Isaacs Corporation. So because of that, and that company continually makes out new models, your score might look different depending on which version of the FICO score they're looking at. They might be looking at the 2014 version or the 2007 version. It's going to be slightly adjusted as time goes on, but when people look at their credit score, there's a lot of reasons why it can look different. That's one of the reasons. In our credit workshop, we go through a lot of the other reasons too. So if it is something that is particularly of interest to you, we highly recommend either scheduling an appointment with us or coming to that workshop. Today, we're going to be focusing on the two biggest parts of your credit score, the payment history piece and the amounts owed piece. So while there's 5 distinct pieces of your credit score, what you need to know, over half of the score is based on these 2 factors. So Derek's going to talk a little bit about the payment history piece, and then I'll talk about the amounts owed, and we'll take a pause to see if anyone has questions related to credit after that.
Okay, yeah. So as Kevin said, there are like 5 different factors that determines your number, but the 2 big ones are payment history and amounts owed. So what payment history is it takes up 35% of your score, but it sort of asks how many payments have you missed, and then if you're like paying it all like on time, and if you like sort of just not paid it at all. This includes past due items, how long they were past due, and any delinquencies or judgments that are a result of paying late. And I believe it stays on your record for 7 years after you make a after you miss a payment or don't pay at all. So that's something that you want to keep in mind, because that does stay on there for quite a while. And most loans are considered delinquent when you are more than 30 days late on a payment. So if you're late, pay for it, but definitely don't wait past 30 days. And you always want to try and at least make your minimum payment on time. And if that's like on your student loans, it'll tell you what your minimum payment is, and especially on your credit card, it will say like minimum payment due on this date and tell you how much. So you definitely want to do that on time, if not like earlier.
Yes, exactly. And while that first part of the score only looks at if you're making your minimum payment on time, we recommend that you don't carry a balance if possible. So we do recommend paying off your card in full. Part of that also comes down to the second part of the score, which takes a look at how much you already owe elsewhere. So if you think about this, let's say I owed everyone else on this Zoom $40. And then I asked Derek if Derek can loan me $40. Even if I've been making my minimum payments back that we've agreed on, maybe I have to pay you each like $10 a month or whatever. So even if I have great payment history, Derek might still be worried to lend me his $40 since he knows I already owe all this other money to other people. So what you want to do with this part of your score is keep your expenses down. Look at your credit limit on your credit cards and keep your spending under a third at all times. So if you have a $500 limit on your, let's say it's $1,000. If you have a $1,000 limit on your credit card, you never want to have more than like $300 on that card. So even if you have like a bigger expense, it might be a piece of furniture, something like that, maybe it's $450. You want to make sure that as soon as possible, you're at least making a partial payment to get that under 300. And then eventually you're going to want to make sure that you're paying it off in full by the end of the month. So that's going to be really vital if you want to boost your credit score. Lenders do want to make sure you're owing something when you get your statement. So, it does not boost your score if you owe nothing at all. So that's like the trick that they put in there to try to make sure that you have a little bit of debt at any given time. But in general, if you can pay your card off in full, the earlier, the better.
All right, so a big part of your credit score is like credit cards, but also we want to talk about loans. And so loans are like bigger amounts of money that you can borrow from like a bank or a lending institution. What are loans used for? They can be cars, a mortgage for a house, education, like student loans, and also in the form of credit cards. Not many people think of these as loans because they're part of our daily lives, but these are considered loans and they do play a big role in your credit score. And so what we're going to talk about more specifically today, because I'm sure this applies to many of us here at Tech, is borrowing for college. And as you can see in the picture right here, you have a disgruntled man pondering his student loans that he's holding in his hands as he's being weighed down by a huge bag of debt. So some suggestions we have for that is to borrow only what you need. When you go through like how much you can borrow, there is an option for borrowing partial amounts. If you know you're not going to need all of it, just go ahead and do that. So you're not like borrowing all that money and having to pay the interest on that back. And make sure you graduate, especially if you're taking out loans. I don't know exact statistic on this, but a lot of people don't graduate within the 4 year that like colleges try and tell you to graduate by for your bachelor's, and that's completely fine. The biggest thing is that you graduate at all, because your education is an investment. You're borrowing money to go to school, get an education that will eventually, hopefully, get you a job that will get you paid more. So if you don't get that degree, then you're sort of losing out on your investment. And so there are different types of loans. There are like federal loans that you get from like FAFSA after filling that out, or you can get private loans if you go to like a bank or a loan institution. And there are subsidized versus unsubsidized. What subsidized loans are like the government pays the interest that accrues while you're still in school, whereas unsubsidized, that interest is not being paid off. So that starts accruing as soon as it gets paid to you or to the school.
Yeah, awesome. And a lot of students do graduate in close to like that 6 year mark. So if you are on that track of not finishing in the 4 years that you might have originally expected, do know that you have time. You're able to borrow. There's certain limits on the federal loan program of how long you can borrow and how much, but in general, it's natural if your college journey doesn't fit the predetermined path of 4 years. And with those federal direct student loan programs, you do have to file your FAFSA every year to be part of that. So even though you might have filed this year, you still should file if you're planning on looking and see what you're offered for next year. The Office of the University Scholarships and Financial Aid is another resource for you if you have questions on what you need to do for your loans to pay in to Virginia Tech. Where Hokie Wellness comes into the picture here is when it comes to repaying your loan. So if you're looking at paying down your debt, right? Maybe you're at that comfort number for your emergency fund. Maybe you're working towards that 3 months expenses to have saved up, but you also are stressed about your student debt. So you want to be doing something proactive now to reduce your debt later. And we're the office that you can go to for questions related to federal student loan repayment. We can talk about paying off any type of debt as well, but specifically for your federal loans, we're the resource that can go over your different repayment plans, which you have several to pick from. Today, we're going to talk about 3 of the main plans that most people pick. And again, we have a full workshop on this. It goes a little bit more in depth, and most students will schedule one-on-ones to talk about their specific loan situation. But to give you an idea of what is out there, because maybe you hate Derek and I and you never want to see us again, but you still want information on loans. We're here for you. So with the standard repayment plan, that is what most people pick. So if you're graduating with student loans from the federal government, you can estimate the amount you pay each month through the standard repayment plan to be around 1% of what you've borrowed. So if you're like the average Virginia Tech student that graduates with around $25,000 in federal student loans, you can expect your monthly payment to be about $250 a month every month for 10 years after you graduate. And you do have 6 months of a grace period before you need to start making payments on loans. So you do have that time to get a job or get, a home or renting an apartment and getting yourself situated. But you can't expect to make payments for 10 years with the standard repayment plan. This is the plan that gets you out of debt the soonest with paying the least amount in interest possible. So this would be the plan to pick if you want to save the most money, which is why most people pick it. The next option that people pick that's similar to standard is called the graduated repayment plan. So this is not just for graduate students, as some people believe, but this just means that your payments gradually increase over time. The way that this is calculated is that your first couple payments might be much lower than they would if you picked the standard repayment plan. So in that same example where your standard repayment plan was $250 a month, if you select the graduated repayment plan, you might be paying closer to like $140, right? But after the first year or two, then your payment might go up to $190 a month. Then years 3 and 4, it might be $220 a month. And it might gradually increase to the amount that you might be paying like $480 a month those last few years as you approach years 8, 9, and 10. This is appealing for people that may not know exactly what their plans are after graduating, or they're entering a field where they are planning on working for like a nonprofit or community organization at first, but are in a field that in general has higher incomes later on. So that's an option that some people pick as well. What's an increasingly popular plan, and there's many plans based on your income, this is the most popular one of those plans. So you do have other options other than this too, but the way this income-based repayment plan works is they will look at a percentage of how much you earn, and that is what determines the amount of money you pay. Now, this is rooted in some research that if your payments each month are greater than 10% of your discretionary income, it can be considered burdensome, which is defined as negatively impacting your overall quality of life. So having a high amount of debt can be burdensome, which makes sense because if you have a lot of debt, you might feel limited in your ability to see friends, eat healthily, travel. Even getting to work can be a challenge for some people if they have such high expenses that they can't afford a car payment, right? So this plan is an option for you to pay less. The downside of this, one of the downsides of this, is that you're paying for 25 years. So while it might help you month to month, over time, that weight of debt for that 25-year period of time might be something that stresses you out. It's a plan that is really appealing to some people and really not appealing to others. None of these are necessarily better than the other. They're really tailored to having a plan available depending on what your personal situation is. And again, this was a vast oversimplification of the repayment plans available to you. But if you do want to learn more about this, feel free to reach out to us. The other piece that people usually have questions on is on loan forgiveness. Touching briefly on this today is that means that a portion or all of your remaining balance of a loan is forgiven by the government, meaning that you don't need to pay it. So at the end of 25 years for the income-based repayment plan, even if your loan isn't fully paid off by then, the remaining balance will be forgiven by the federal government. There are other loan forgiveness programs out there, the most popular being the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program, where instead of making payments for 25 years under the income-based repayment plan, they forgive your debt after 10 years. But the requirements for that can be pretty stringent, and you have to work for a field in public service. So maybe like a police officer or a teacher or working at a university or government entity. there's some fine print with that too. So if that is something that you're planning on going into, we definitely recommend talking to your loan servicer, which is a place that you make your payments to make sure that you're doing everything that you can to be on track for that. So while it can be a confusing and somewhat stressful process, we're here to help you out along the way if you have any questions.
And here are just some financial tips, because I know we threw a lot at you today and it might be hard to figure out where to start. So this is just like a good place to sort of get an idea of what you can do now. So you can schedule 10 minutes each week to review your finances. And this is basically just looking at how, like, your expenses, what you spent, looking at your income, and paying off your credit card in full if you have one and if you're able to. And you could record the frequency of making certain purchases, like going out to eat, for example. And let's say you want to like try and cut down on the amount you spent for that. Sometimes it can be hard to just say, yeah, I'm only going to spend $20 or $40 this week going out to eat. Instead, you can say, hey, maybe instead of going out to eat 3 or 4 times this week, I'll go out to eat twice. That way you sort of limit the amount you're going out rather than limiting the amount you're spending while going out. And remember, your personal finances are personal. And what that means is what works for you might not work for anyone else, and vice versa. You have your own, like, a unique lifestyle that you want to maintain, and you have your own way of doing that. So don't think that there is a one solution to fix like everyone's problems. And we have a brief assessment that we'd love if you could fill out real quick. I'm sending the link in the chat right now.
And this is a great tool because not only does this provide Derek and I feedback on the session today, but it also has you identify some of the things that you might plan to do differently or continue doing that we've talked about today. So whether that's about your credit or budgeting, setting up an account to make payments on your loans, just writing it down, just like taking that step to write your expenses down on a budget one time, identifying something that you want to do differently to benefit your financial wellness through this survey makes you more likely to follow through with it. So this is a great survey for us, obviously, but we really encourage you to click the link and open it up, even if you don't fill it out right now, that you do fill it out at some point today or in the next hour. And we want to close out by giving you a chance to ask any financial questions to us. You can either send them to the chat and Derek can read it out loud, or you can unmute yourself and it could be about any financial topic, whether it's something we brought up today or something that's just on your mind.
This is kind of a weird question, but I don't know if there are some of us who are graduating this semester, and you said that Hokie Financial Wellness is like one of the resources we have to ask for help. I was wondering, even if we're recent graduates, if we could still come to the office and ask for advice, or if that is like not a thing you do anymore.
Great question. So we're one of the offices on campus that service undergraduate, graduate, and recent alumni.
Okay.
We also service, I don't know, I'm assuming you're at the Virginia Tech campus in Blacksburg, but we do also service the Roanoke campus and the Northern Capital Region campus. So whatever campus you're at and whatever type of student or former student you are, we're here to support you in that.
Okay, thanks.
Oscar has a question about the credit card limits.
Yeah, my question was just like, is it, you said 30% of your limit is the supposed best amount that you're supposed to use?
Yeah, we recommend not exceeding that amount. So at any given point in time, you want that amount to be lower. The reason for that is, and we didn't get in the weeds for this today, but say hello to Derek's cat. We didn't get in the weeds for this today, but when you get your statement from the credit card company, that'll say how much you owe versus how much you could use on your limit. They send that same report to the credit bureaus, which are the ones that keep your credit report that your score is based on. So even if you pay your card off in full you know, by the end of the month. If you've almost maxed it out, when you get that statement, it'll still hurt that part of your score. So I know that might get a little complicated, but a good way to work around that potential, even if you are planning on always paying your card off in full by the due date, is to make payments throughout the month to make sure that balance is always low, or even better, paying it off. I don't know if that answered your question.
You know, I just wanted to know, like, if you like exceed the limit, what would happen?
Yeah, so it would hurt your score. The closer you get to maxing out your card, the more it hurts your score. Whereas if you get it to be like a third of your limit or lower, it usually will help your score. With a lower amount owed, helping your score more.
Okay. And like a final question would be like, how does the limit like change? Like I know you can go from like different credit card limits. Like sometimes you get a extension, I guess, on your credit card. I don't know how that happens.
So to my understanding, like generally, you're able to sort of like update your income information, and then like the credit card company will tell you, okay, yeah, since you're making more now, you can like sort of increase your line of credit. Correct me if I'm wrong, Kevin.
No, that's perfectly accurate. Yeah, that's how most of the time it works. Sometimes they might just increase your limit anyway if they look at your credit score. So if you have a higher credit score, they might make you eligible for a higher limit. The reason they do this is because people's spending mirrors their limit. So by giving you access to more money, you're more likely to spend more money. And when you spend more money, you're more likely to not be able to pay it off in full and then owe the credit card company interest, right? So while it does benefit you from your scores perspective, right? Because if you have a bigger limit, it's way easier to be under a third of it. So it benefits you and your credit score, but it also makes you more likely to owe the credit card company more money, which is why they might incentivize you to increase your limit. There's pros and cons to that. It's not necessarily wrong, but I just wanted to note the reason why that might happen automatically.
Okay, thank you very much.
So feel free to continue messaging questions in the chat, or whatever makes the most sense for you. You can also email them to me here. That's my email, suttonkl@vt.edu. If you're interested in scheduling the financial coaching appointments, they're usually like 45 minutes long. They're virtual right now to talk about more in depth about something we talked about today or just a general financial question you have. Or if you're like preparing for graduation, looking at what you're going to do with that first paycheck, right? If you know what job you have. We also have presentations that go more in depth on these topics. Starting later this year and over the summer, we'll have online learning modules in Canvas. So again, if you hate Derek and I, you never want to see us again, but you do want more information, we'll have over 21 different modules of different financial topics that you can look into, such as insurance or even just information on budgeting. So that's going to be a great resource as well. And if you're part of any student groups, do invite us to present. We can tailor content based on what the theme of that group is. So in the past, I've done a session on like eating healthy on a budget for like this gluten-free club. Like there was a student group that was very much into eating healthy on a budget. So really any way to tie finances into it could be a fun activity. It could just be having us present one of our other workshops to your groups, but do keep us in mind as a resource.
And I just sent in the Sign Up Genius link. If you want to sign up for more workshops, there's a whole list with different dates. And yeah.
So yeah, and do let us know if you have any other questions, but we really appreciate you giving us your time today.
Let's see. Thank you, Kevin and Derek, for a wonderful presentation and workshop. And I'm sure that many of the students will be contacting you, especially those who are about to graduate. And so thank you again. I really appreciate it.
Yes, thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, guys.